What's up everyone? So in last video we covered strings, and today we'll be talking about booleans and conditions. So let's get into it. So earlier we said that a boolean represents either a true or false value. And this is very important in programming because oftentimes we'll be evaluating expressions that will either evaluate to true or false. So I'm going to write out some examples and then we'll talk about them. Okay, so here are 3 examples of Boolean expressions. Let me just go ahead and run the code so you can see the output. So you see we get false, false, and true, because each of these conditions gets evaluated, and obviously the first 2 are false because 9 is not greater than 10, and 9 is not equal to 10. But the third condition is true because 9 is less than 10. So that's essentially what these operators mean. There's actually a list on W3 Schools. If you come over to this page, the comparison operators are what you can use to basically create Boolean expressions. So for example, just in these examples, we use the less than operator, the greater than operator, and the equal operator. But there's also not equals, there's also a greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these are the main comparison operators that you'll be using. And just as a quick side note, there's also logical operators which can work in conjunction with comparison operators. So if you want to test for multiple conditions, you can use and or. Sometimes you want to use not if you want to negate the answer. So the comparison operators and the logical operators can be used to create conditional statements. So let's imagine that you're playing a game. In this game, you have 3 lives, and you also have a score. So in that game, the game will end when you have 0 lives. So that in code, that might look something like this, num of lives is equal to 3. So when you start the game, you have 3. And also your score would also be 0 when you start. Okay, so we started the game, and let's just imagine you're on level 1. So to get to level 2, you need 100 points, or you need to score 100 points. So in code, that might look something like this. You might have a condition that says if the number of lives is greater than 0, and the score is greater than, say, 100. So this would mean that you need at least 100 points to move on to the next level. So this expression will either evaluate to true or false. So this is just one basic example of using comparison and logical operators to kind of form some sort of logic that might be used in a game. So the next thing I want to talk about is the bool function. This is similar to the typecasting. You can basically cast any value to a bool. So that might look something like this. So let's just print out, say, bool of 1. So this is true because most things will evaluate to true. The only things that will not evaluate to true are say a 0 or an empty string. I'm actually going to write out a list of all the things that will evaluate to false, because there are a lot less things that will evaluate to false. Almost everything evaluates to true except for a few things. So I'm going to write out the things that will evaluate to false. Okay, let's run our code. So all of these values evaluate to false, but like I said earlier, most of the time things will evaluate to true. These are the only things that will evaluate to false, because a 0, an empty string, an empty list. We'll talk about lists later on, but this is an empty list. But if this list had an item in it, 1, or if this string had hello, or if this number was anything besides 0, then it'll evaluate to true. So if I rerun my code, then you see now all of these evaluate to true, because now it's not an empty list, now it's not an empty string, now it's not 0. Basically what I'm trying to say is that the bool function can be used to evaluate a value as true or false. So that's about it for Booleans. We're almost done talking about the very fundamental stuff, and then pretty soon we'll start getting into the more interesting concepts and actually start applying the stuff that we've learned. So stay tuned for that, but thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.